to strategically have it with the garden. Did I? Yes. They don't like what? Oh, really? Kay says they don't like grackles. And they've done a few of her grackles in because that's just not one of their friends. Something to keep in mind, that they are very assertive. They can be. So, that being said, any questions so far? Yes?
You said you grew from a handful of chickens to 30. Can you introduce new adult chickens to others that have been there already, or are they territorial?
I'm going to make some of these, I might make notes to come back to. The question that came up is introduction of chickens. If you have some established a chicken flock and you want to introduce new chickens, what's the best way to go about that? And you can, but there is a strategy for that. And I might take that for an after talking chicken introduction. And, but yeah, very good question. All right. That being said, we'll go how to use them in the garden. What you want to keep in mind is chickens are known for scratching and aerating soil, but they scratch everything. If you were to put a chicken coop right here today where you're sitting, you see all this green grass, and you had it sized appropriately, I would say within maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, depending on the number and the size, it's going to be a nice brown area. They will eat everything. So when you're planning, keep that in mind if you want to have them have one area, or are you trying to have it, them keep lawn control, lawn mowing going in multiple areas, and how you would handle that. Because they can scratch so fiercely, they will destroy young plants and seedlings. But they can also aerate your soil. So like I said, every side has two sides. Something to consider when you have young plants is some way to keep the chickens out of those till they're better established. To do that, you might consider using some type of netting. I don't know if the plastic is called deer netting. You want to have it let in enough light, but be sturdy enough just to make some kind of barrier. You could use chicken wire or some other kind of obstacle to keep them out. We've used bird netting, but we find it's kind of a hassle if we don't tuck it well. It gets on everything. We haven't had trouble with our chickens getting caught in it, but I have found a snake or a lizard once in a while that didn't quite make it through. So good and bad, depending on how you look at that. See, what else can I tell you? Strategy for chicken time in the garden. Because you don't want them overrunning it, and they will, if they get the chance, they'll go have a buffet. One year I planted a nice young group of collard greens and everything else, and I guess I hadn't put the netting back down. They were having a great time, but my plants didn't do so well that time. Something like considering timed visits, maybe have them chickens are very routine oriented. So if maybe you made it when you let them out and let them go in the garden briefly, put a little feed, let them spend, anywhere from 10 minutes to an hour or something where they're going around getting the morning bugs, but getting them out and making sure you're watching them, of course, that they're doing what you expect. But that way they get used to doing that morning round patrol. Same thing at night, right before they go in. As we all know, the bugs start coming out as the sun starts going down. Same kind of option. That would be one way to do it. Another one I like, I haven't used this one yet, but as we get more chickens, you always have more coops, and then you always decide, what do you want to try this time? Is putting a moat around the garden. Say you had a square garden, and you wanted, if you put a chicken run around, so it's almost like double fencing. You have a second lane that would be for your chickens, and they go in there and they can eat bugs and whatnot and run through there. They're making a barrier, a wall barrier for bugs or other things that come across the ground to come in. So that's another effective way to help control your garden bugs without having them get to your garden, the chickens, that is. Garden bed preparation. You can have the chickens obviously if you had a garden that you were going to use for a bed you were planning to use, you could have them be housed over that temporarily. That would be the compost pile, the tilling, and so forth to go forward, and let them fertilize your sitting bed. That would be one way to do that. Some of these mobile chicken tractors are perfect for that. You can move them to an area over a bed, let them aerate it, till it, get it ready for do that in the summer. In the fall or the spring, you could use that bed ready to go. Nice, and adding some extra black gold in there. What else? Another thing I like to do is have extra. I plant a little extra if you have the space. Just know you're going to lose some to the chickens, and let them enjoy that and have a little extra. It's good for them to eat the greens. You'll have richer eggs. It's all cyclic, so you're still getting enriched, and that way you're not kind of fighting them to get to the the tasty morsels that you want for your family. I find that's a win-win for me personally. And of course, I haven't set it effect yet, but if you consider, and this is front and back, the handout. Another thing is when you're, because the chickens like to take dust baths. Dust baths help keep their mites down and their bugs off of them. You'll see them just flopping their wings and getting in there sideways and just getting all cool. Cools them down too. Of course, what is nicer to take a bath in than some nice rich tilled garden soil? So if you can, leave a little area, just accept it and let that be in the prime spot in the afternoon sun where they can get in and just make that their dust bath. And then they can feel good about that. I think that's a just nice way to, again, let them go. If you have another place, fine, but it's another thing where I've just accepted that's their area, they like it, and I just don't garden there. What I haven't said, of course, is the composting, and I'm going to get to that because how else can you use them? The main and primary thing I think of is the composting. That's really where they enrich the soil. And I like to integrate that part with the housing considerations, which I have next. So when you get into that, deciding how are you going to best collect that black gold, you might consider it with, when you get into chicken design considerations, and our vendors I'm sure can answer a lot more of your questions, Patsy and Josh, on that. But when you have roosts, the chickens go up at night to roost. And if you have a roost, they'll go up there. You'll find while they sleep, they do kind of powerhouse through the poop too. That's their big time for pooping. So if you have some kind of drop boards that catch the poop that are easily removable, you could take that easily and transport that to your compost pile. That's one way to go about it. Another thing I really liked was having the design in such a way that the roost maybe isn't part of the contained chicken coop, but drops outside. And that way you're not worried about them mixing in their poop, or the primary time they're pooping, but you're able to easily collect. So that's just a design consideration I think is worth throwing out there. The lazy method, I'm a big fan of, deep litter, at least during the cooler months here in Texas. And that basically means you have some layerings of brown, some kind of shavings and maybe pine shavings and whatever else, and let that be maybe 2-3 inches deep. Let them for a while, have their time in it, and in their chicken house, and poop and whatnot. And the best way to decide when it's time to add more layers of brown is the smell test. If you go in and your eyes are watering and it's ammonia, that's bad. And I would say go down to chicken level, squat down and kind of see are you getting a breeze? Are your eyes watering? Does it smell clean and fresh? If you do it properly, there shouldn't be any smell. So when you start seeing smell, or even before then, you'll get a feel for it. Add another 2 or 3 inch layer of the brown and keep it going. Again, that brown could be leaves, shavings, straw, whatever it is to help aerate. And to get them, they can naturally aerate, but if there's a time where it seems, if you're doing this deep litter, they're not really aerating as well, throw out a little hand of scratch. You might have heard of that. It's really, especially in winter when they might need a little more energy. It's candy. It's not their food, but throw a little out, and it gives them extra energy. They'll fluff the ground for it. You'll see them do this whole, picking out their sides, looking around, and that's really good to help it aerate. So that's one of my favorite. Probably between late October and maybe, depending on the year, May or April, I would do it. Like right now, I would not go into deep litter because as that is breaking down, that compost pile is giving off a lot of heat. And here in Texas especially, chickens are pretty cold hardy. The heat is what's going to be hard for them. So we don't need to add any extra. So the spring I wouldn't recommend, spring to summer. But it's a very effective way to use that. Let it sit, 3-6 months. Take that deep, rich part, the part that's already been sitting, and that can go right into your garden. Chicken tractors. Another way that's kind of the lazy cleanup way, but also very effective for fertilizing.